In the silence of the world, before his name became legend, there was only a boy, restless, wild, and burning. A boy who would grow into a force that no boundary could contain. A boy named Lee Junfan, known to the world as Bruce Lee. But before the fire came the struggle. Before the roar came the whisper of doubt. And before the legend stood tall, he had to crawl through darkness. Bruce was born in 1940 in San Francisco, the year of the dragon, a time of uncertainty when the world was breaking apart in war. His parents, touring with an opera troupe, carried him across oceans before settling back in Hong Kong. There, the streets became his first dojo, and the chaos of the city, his first teacher. Hong Kong after the war was no paradise. Poverty lingered in every alley, and crime whispered through every night. For a young boy with too much energy and too much pride, the streets were both playground and battlefield. Bruce fought not for glory, but to survive. He was fast, fearless, but reckless. He punched before he thought and spoke before he listened. Trouble followed him like a shadow. School fights, gang clashes, broken rules. He was the kind of boy parents warned their children about. But inside that chaos was a flame, wild, untamed, and waiting for purpose. The world saw a delinquent. But destiny saw a warrior being forged. After one too many fights, the law came knocking. At 18, Bruce was sent away, back to the land of his birth, America. His father's words were sharp. Go. Make something of yourself. He arrived in Seattle with almost nothing. No fame, no future, no promise. Just a suitcase, a name, and a dream he hadn't yet dared to define. He worked odd jobs, washing dishes, sweeping floors, by day. By night he studied, trained, and dreamed. He enrolled at the University of Washington, studying philosophy, the art of thought itself. And between lectures and late-night shifts, he began teaching martial arts to a few curious students in a small backyard. There, in that humble corner of the world, the seed of revolution was planted. Because Bruce didn't just teach how to fight, he taught how to live. He saw martial arts not as combat, but as expression. Not about defeating others, but mastering oneself. Every punch, every kick, a language of truth spoken through the body. He told his students not to mimic, but to become. Not to follow blindly, but to discover their own way. In a world that demanded conformity, Bruce dared to preach freedom. Soon, his backyard grew too small for his dream. He opened his first martial arts school, Junfan Gung Fu Institute. But not everyone approved. Traditional masters saw him as a heretic, a man corrupting ancient arts. They said, "You cannot teach our ways to foreigners." They said, "You break the code." But Bruce didn't bow. He believed truth belonged to no race, no nation, no boundary. If knowledge could free the mind, why should it be caged? So they challenged him, a duel. If he lost, he'd close his school forever. The fight was fierce, fast, brutal, primal. When it ended, Bruce stood victorious. But victory did not satisfy him. He wasn't proud. He was angry that the fight had taken too long, angry that his technique, though powerful, was chained by tradition. That day, he vowed to tear down every barrier that limited human movement, physical or mental. That day, Jeet Kune Do was born. Not a style, but a philosophy of freedom. It meant using no way's way, having no limitation as limitation. And from that moment, Bruce Lee was no longer just a fighter. He was a revolution in human form. Hollywood came calling, curious about this magnetic young man who moved like lightning and spoke with fire. Bruce saw it as a bridge, a way to show the world that martial arts was not violence, but poetry in motion. He dreamed of bringing East and West together through art, not war. But the dream turned cold. They laughed at him, told him America wasn't ready for an Asian lead. They said, the world doesn't want to see your face. It wants to see a mask. They offered him background roles, stereotypes, faceless fighters. He smiled politely and refused. He walked away from the empire of lies and back toward his truth. Because Bruce Lee understood something few ever do, that rejection is not failure. It is redirection, and every no he heard was simply the world's way of saying, prove us wrong. He returned to Hong Kong, the city that once caged him, now ready to conquer it. What awaited him was destiny itself. Hong Kong cinema was dying, lost in repetition. And then came Bruce, fast, fierce, and real. No stunt double, no pretense, just raw power, philosophy, and truth. When the Big Boss released, crowds flooded theaters. By the time Fist of Fury and Way of the Dragon hit screens, the entire nation rose to its feet. Bruce Lee wasn't just a man anymore. He was an awakening. His body was a storm, his eyes lightning, his movement poetry and punishment woven together. He wasn't performing. He was expressing his soul, and people felt it. For the first time, millions saw an Asian man not as a servant or a sidekick, but as a hero, a symbol of pride, proof that power knows no color and greatness needs no permission. The West had rejected him, but the East crowned him king. Behind the cameras, Bruce was relentless. He trained till his knuckles split and his lungs burned. He read philosophy, anatomy, physics, anything that could sharpen the blade of his mind. He believed the body was an instrument of truth, and he wanted perfection. But perfection has a price. Sleep faded. Pain lingered. His friends saw exhaustion creeping in, but Bruce refused to rest. He was chasing not success, but transcendence, to push the limits of what a human could be. And in doing so, he began walking the line between life and something beyond it. One day, during an intense workout, his body broke. A brutal back injury, a slipped disc that threatened to end everything. Doctors said he might never fight again, never kick, never run. For a man whose life was movement, that was a death sentence. The world saw a warrior fall, but Bruce saw a test. For 6 long months he was trapped in stillness. His body betrayed him, but his mind did not. He lay in bed, pain coursing through him, staring at the ceiling and thinking. He wrote, he visualized. He imagined every movement he could not perform, until thought itself became training. He refused to accept the finality of pain, because deep inside he knew. A true warrior is not one who never falls, but one who rises every single time he does. When he returned, he was changed. He was no longer just Bruce Lee, he was a force of nature. Faster, sharper, deeper. He had walked through pain and come out steel. The injury that was supposed to end him became the crucible that remade him. He understood now that strength wasn't in muscle. It was in the will that commands it. He began training harder than ever, redefining not only his art, but himself. The world watched in awe as he filmed Enter the Dragon. Every scene radiated power, precision, and purpose. It was more than a movie, it was a message. A man telling the world, this is what human potential looks like. And yet, destiny is not always kind to those who burn brightest. At the height of his glory, when his name reached every corner of the world, Bruce Lee's flame flickered. In 1973 he was gone, just 32 years old. A storm extinguished too soon. But legends do not die. They echo. They live in every fighter who refuses to give up. In every dreamer who rises when the world says, stay down. In every heart that believes it was born for something more. There are 2 battles in life. The first is against the world. The second, and far greater one, is against yourself. Bruce Lee had conquered the first. He had silenced doubters, shattered barriers, and built a legend. But now, in the stillness between fame and fate, he faced the second, the one that no man can win with fists alone. Because while the world saw a warrior, inside he was becoming something even more powerful, a philosopher in motion, a man of thought forged by pain. Pain teaches what comfort hides, and in those long months of recovery after his injury, Bruce discovered the deepest truth, that the body may fail, but the mind, if disciplined, can bend reality itself. He began to study not just movement but meaning. He read the words of ancient sages, meditated in the quiet hours, and looked inward. He realized that fighting was never truly about defeating others. It was about confronting fear, doubt, and limitation, the enemies that live inside us all. He began to see martial arts not as violence, but as art, the art of self-expression. Every strike, every motion became a mirror reflecting who he was, and he demanded of himself absolute honesty, not perfection, but truth. Because what is power, if not the courage to face yourself? When Bruce returned to teaching, he no longer taught technique. He taught understanding. He spoke not about punches or kicks, but about fluidity, adaptability, freedom. He taught his students to move like water, flowing, changing, becoming whatever the moment required. But this was more than philosophy. It was a way of life. Water is patient. It yields yet conquers. It moves around obstacles, not through them. And yet, given time, it wears down even the hardest stone. That is what Bruce became. Unstoppable. Not because he was rigid, but because he was free. He trained not just his muscles, but his awareness. He listened to his breath, to silence, to the pulse of his own heartbeat. He realized mastery is not found in domination, but in understanding. The greatest fighters are not those who strike hardest, but those who know when not to strike at all. Fame had returned to him, greater than ever before. His films broke records, his face was on every poster, every child mimicked his stance. But Bruce was not intoxicated by glory. He saw fame as a responsibility, a tool to awaken others. He trained harder than ever. While others slept, he ran through the night. While others rested, he drilled every movement until his body became lightning. He pushed the limits of endurance. He believed the human being was infinite, that the mind could command the body beyond pain, beyond fatigue, beyond fear. He would rather live one intense day as a lion than 100 years as a sheep. He believed mediocrity was death, and that to live without purpose was to die before your heart stopped beating. So he demanded more, not just from others, but from himself. Every day was a test, every breath a challenge, every failure fuel for the next victory. But even dragons have shadows. And Bruce's greatest strength, his relentless drive, became his greatest burden. Perfection is a fire that never stops burning. He chased it endlessly in his art, his body, his mind. Sleep was scarce. Rest was weakness. He wanted to go beyond human limits until his body screamed for mercy. His friends worried. His family watched him fade between the brilliance of his work and the exhaustion behind it. But Bruce could not stop. To him, stillness felt like death. Every moment wasted was a moment stolen from greatness. He often stood before a mirror, studying his reflection not with vanity, but with calculation, seeking the flaws no one else could see. He would shadowbox alone for hours, his movements precise, his breathing calm, as if fighting a ghost that no one else could perceive. That ghost was himself, and he vowed to defeat it, or die trying. Hollywood, once dismissive, now came crawling back. The same studios that had rejected him begged to work with him. They saw what the world had seen, that Bruce Lee wasn't just an actor, he was a phenomenon. They offered him Enter the Dragon, a film that would bridge East and West at last, the story of a man who fights not for fame, but for justice, for truth, for honor. Bruce poured his soul into it. Every movement was real, every scene a message. He choreographed not for spectacle, but for meaning. He wanted every punch to speak, every silence to echo. He fought not just opponents, but ideas. The idea that martial arts was mere violence, the idea that culture divides us, the idea that one man cannot change the world. Because Bruce Lee had already changed it. He just needed the world to realize it. As filming wrapped, Bruce felt something stirring within. Not fear, not exhaustion, but something deeper. He had achieved everything the world could offer: fame, respect, mastery. And yet he remained unsatisfied. Because greatness to him was never about applause. It was about evolution. He began speaking of new dreams, of writing books, creating films that explored philosophy and life itself. He wanted to awaken the warrior within everyone, not just in the arena, but in the heart. He spoke of human potential, of transcending the body, conquering the self. To those around him, it sounded almost prophetic, as though he knew his time was short. He trained harder than ever, slept less, moved faster, as if trying to condense a lifetime into every hour he had left. And perhaps, somewhere deep inside, he already sensed that his flame was nearing its final blaze. It happened quietly, too quietly for the storm he was. A sudden headache, a collapse, and just like that, the dragon fell. The world froze. Headlines spread across continents. Fans wept, fighters mourned. A legend had died at 32. But legends don't die. They transform. Bruce Lee's body may have stopped, but his energy, his message, his fire continued to ripple through time. He had not lived long, but he had lived fully, completely, with no hesitation. He had shown the world what it means to live awake, to move with purpose, to breathe with meaning, to strike with truth. His legacy wasn't in the movies, or the trophies, or even the martial arts. It was in the mirror of every human being who looks at their reflection and decides, I can be more. After his passing, the streets of Hong Kong filled with mourning. Fans wept openly. Strangers bowed in silence. Movie theaters became temples of grief. His final film, Enter the Dragon, released weeks after his death, and the world that once doubted him now stood still. The screen came alive with his image, every kick, every breath, every movement bursting with life, power, and truth. Audiences around the globe sat in stunned silence, feeling not like they were watching an actor, but witnessing a man transcending mortality itself. For 90 minutes, Bruce Lee was alive again, and for the millions watching, he would remain alive forever. From the backstreets of Hong Kong to the skylines of America, a generation awoke. Children began mimicking his moves in alleyways and parks. Fighters found purpose in his philosophy. Dreamers found courage in his story. He had done the impossible. He had turned his own life into a mirror through which humanity could see its potential. But the world, as it often does, tried to tame his image, to package it, to own it. They printed his face on posters, toys, and shirts, but the true essence of Bruce Lee could never be sold. Because Bruce was not a brand. He was a lesson. He taught that strength is not measured by muscle, but by how deeply one believes in their purpose. He taught that courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to be controlled by it. He taught that mastery is not about control, but about surrendering to the flow of life itself. And most of all, he showed the world that the human spirit, when freed from doubt and fear, is infinite. Years turned to decades. The cameras stopped rolling, the lights dimmed, but his flame never faded. From Tokyo to Toronto, from Los Angeles to Lahore, his image became a universal symbol of discipline, motion, and truth. Athletes, soldiers, actors, thinkers, they all found themselves returning to his teachings. Even in fields far beyond martial arts, his wisdom flowed like water, reminding people that greatness is not a gift. It is a choice. He had planted seeds in every soul willing to believe that limits are illusions. And those seeds became forests of strength, determination, and awakening. Every fighter who stands alone in a dark gym long after everyone else has left hears him. Every artist who keeps creating despite rejection feels him. Every person who looks in the mirror and refuses to quit carries his reflection. That is how legends live, not in monuments, but in movement. Bruce Lee's philosophy was never about martial arts alone. It was about liberation, the freedom to be completely, unapologetically yourself. He believed that the greatest tragedy of life is not death, but never living at all. So he demanded of life everything it had to offer. He learned, he adapted, he evolved, never chained by culture, expectation, or fear. He was Chinese, yet global, traditional, yet revolutionary, a fighter, yet a philosopher. He refused to be one thing, because he understood that to define yourself is to limit yourself. Truth cannot be organized into systems or styles. It must be lived. It must be experienced. That is why he shattered the boundaries of art, race, and belief. He didn't just teach how to fight, he taught how to be alive. Today, more than half a century later, his influence breathes everywhere, in gyms and dojos, in film and philosophy, in every quote scribbled in notebooks, in every dream whispered by those who refuse to settle for less. Bruce Lee awakened the idea that a single human being, through sheer will, discipline, and faith, can change the entire shape of the world. He proved that it doesn't matter where you come from, what language you speak, or what obstacles lie before you. What matters is whether you have the courage to keep moving forward, to be fluid when life hits hard, to adapt when the world closes in, and to never stop expressing the truth that lives within you. Because the only defeat that ever truly exists is the defeat you accept. In the end, Bruce Lee was not teaching us to fight others. He was teaching us to fight ourselves, to defeat fear, weakness, and doubt, to conquer the voices that tell us we are not enough. He showed that discipline is not punishment, it is freedom. That mastery is not about control, it is about surrender. And that true power is not domination, it is harmony. To be like water is to live without resistance. To move through life not as a storm, but as a current, strong yet calm. That was the essence of Bruce Lee's soul. A man who became water itself, flowing, transforming, never stopping. Time moves on, but his spirit remains timeless. Every era finds its heroes, but few find their truth. Bruce Lee was both. He was the bridge between worlds,